Good afternoon. The weather report in the Portland metropolitan area is 28 degrees and overcast. And today, Dimitri's diary entry of Friday, 10th March 1906, and it's Friday here as well, over a century later and on the other side of the world. We have several introductions today, although some of them are people we've already met or heard references to. And we also have one very significant work of Russian literature, the most important work that's been mentioned since Dmitri refers to War and Peace, which obviously he wasn't allowed to read. All right, so let's dig right in. Early this morning, I went for a walk and dug a new passageway. One was 30 steps. Yesterday, we started reading Woe from Wit, but we only read a little. Today, we didn't read at all. I just can't find the time to read Rudin, which I haven't finished. Petrov and Batushka were here this morning. My lessons went all right, but I just couldn't study the texts. We lunched at home with Mikhail Petrovich and Countess Alsufieva. Afterwards, I had arithmetic and riding. I didn't do any jumping today because they gave me a new horse. It's black and terribly sweet, but very tall, so I can't get on it by myself. What a scandal. Grunwald came to the manege while we were riding, which was very scary, especially since I had a new horse. But fortunately, everything went all right. Petach is coming tomorrow, and I haven't read what he assigned me. In the evening, I played with Borya and showed Mademoiselle some card tricks. I think I'll take my German book to bed with me so I can read it tomorrow morning when I get up early. Otherwise, I won't be able to do it. 9:45. Okay, so Aunt Ella is still there. And some of the people are attached to her household. Mikhail Petrovich, the man who was accusing Dmitri of being rude and self-important, and also Alexandra Andreevna Alsufieva. And I don't know if they were connected to, well, no, they wouldn't have been relatives, because her husband, well, I don't think her husband was a Mikhail. Pretty sure he wasn't. And she was about 60 years old at the time, and she was, as I understand it, sort of the supervisor of Ella's ladies-in-waiting. And let's see, there were two, or there will be, from Dmitri's perspective, two Alsufievs mentioned in his diaries in 1921, and one of them was Vasily, who was Alexandra's son. All right, but he's only mentioned in the one diary volume, so he would have been an acquaintance. He was living in Italy after the revolution. He would have been an acquaintance without being a friend or someone Dmitri was close to. And Petrov, I think, was probably a priest, probably Father Grigory Petrov, who shows up in Dmitri's 1919 diary, and maybe someone connected to Ella's household. And Batushka, if you're Romanov aficionados and you've heard the term Batushka, then it's probably in relation to the Tsar himself, because the peasants would refer to the Tsar as Batushka, and and the empress is Matushka, and those terms mean little father and little mother. But that was a peasant practice, and Dmitri is not referring to Uncle Nicky. Batyushka is coming along with Petrov, and was probably some, I don't know, elderly priest, I would guess, and probably again connected to Ella's household. Okay. Grunwald, the scary man who came to the manege. I guess he was scary because he was in charge of riding and making sure that Dmitri was learning what a future cavalry officer needed to learn. So, yeah, that was like having the principal come to the classroom, I guess. Okay, I don't know if Dmitri had a horse, maybe in Moscow, maybe in Tsarskoye Selo, that was his horse, that was, in addition to being the horse that he took riding lessons on, was also sort of a pet. He never mentions that, and it sounds like what horse he rode was simply outside of his control, because he also mentions in an earlier diary entry this horse that has given him a blister on his hand because it keeps pulling. And he doesn't like that horse. Okay, Betok is clearly the German teacher who's coming the next day and has given him an assigned reading, which he hasn't done. And that is another thing that reminds me of my niece and nephew. My niece is currently in high school, and I help her sometimes with various of her homework assignments, and so often the attitude is, "Oh, don't worry, Uncle Will, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll get up early." The other one is that I'll do it, during a break at school, a lunch break or something, and I don't know. I guess that works out all right. Sometimes her grades are kind of all over the place. And now Borya. I like this. So he gets a chance. He hasn't done much reading of Rudin. I don't blame him for that. I don't like the book myself. He liked it very much initially, but he hasn't, amidst all his lessons and other things, he hasn't had much time to play with Borya, and this evening he knows he needs to get his German homework done, but he just wants to play with little Borya. And so the squirt gun has been superseded by card tricks as the latest thing he's into. And so he's showing Mademoiselle card tricks. And I mentioned in an earlier diary when he said that he had created one of his little scandals by saying something offensive to Mademoiselle during a walk. And I had mentioned that I had no idea who Mademoiselle is. But based on this, and based on the fact that in the previous diary entry, if I recall correctly, Borya had been on the walk as well, I'm thinking that Mademoiselle is Borya's nanny. All right. Now we go on to Woe from Wit. And I'm embarrassed to have to tell you that I have not myself read this really seminal and important work of Russian literature. It's not broadly known outside of Russia, but within Russia, it's something that everybody would know. I don't know about the most modern generation of Russians because I don't really have any opportunity to talk to them. Most of the Russians I know are middle-aged or older. But Woe for Wit, in Russian, it is called, what is it called? Gorya. I have it here. Gorya at Uma. And I have not read it in any language, which is, as I say, I'm embarrassed to mention that. The author is one, again, not widely known in the West, Alexander Griboyedov. There's a reference to him in the Master and Margarita, because the sort of club where all the privileged Soviet writers hang out is called Griboyedov House. But anyway, Woe from Wit is actually a play, and it's a play in verse. It was written in 1823, so it was almost 100 years old at the time that Dmitri was assigned to read it. And interestingly, it was compulsory reading in Soviet schools. And it wasn't necessarily a book I would have thought would have been considered politically appropriate for Dmitri, because when it started out, when it was published in 1823, it was considered suspect, to say the least, and it was banned, although there were various readings of parts of it, so it became known in Russia even prior to its publication. And finally, in 1833, it was published partly. Parts of it were published. So this was it was banned during the reign of Alexander I. Some of that ban was lifted during the reign of Dmitri's great-grandfather, Nicholas I. And then it was published in full during the reign of Dmitri's grandfather, Alexander II, who was more liberal, if you can refer to him in those terms, and more of the great reforms took place during his reign. So 1861 was the same year the serfs were liberated, and that was when Woe from Wit was published in full. So what it is a satire of Moscow society, and it includes some characters on the liberal end of the spectrum, and even a little bit beyond the liberal end of the spectrum. So I hear, at any rate, I'm going to make a note to myself that I need to read Woe from Wit. Dmitri hasn't apparently, as of the 10th of March, read enough of it to comment on it. I think that would be something hard for a 14-year-old to read a play in verse that's almost 100 years old, but we'll see if he has anything to say about it. And if so, I'm looking forward to that. So that is it for today. I don't think we can expect as much along the lines of pranks and scandals while Aunt Ella is in residence in Tsarskaya, as is otherwise the case when she's not there. And I will leave it at that. Come back for the next diary entry, and come back for the diary entry of 30th of December 1920. All right, bye.